In this video, I'm going to show you how to take the classic Dear Jane quilt and adjust the size of the center blocks and the borders to create the classic Dear Jane quilt, but at a different size. So the first thing you want to do is open your Dear Jane project. So I click on Open an Existing Project, and I'll scroll down. Now, if this is your first time opening the master, and then you just click on Master, and then you'll want to save it with a new name. So all of the instructions are in the Using with EQ PDF document and in other videos that I've created, but you will open this one, click OK, and do a file save as and give it a new name, like something like DJ My Dear Jane Quilt. So that's very important because we don't want to overwrite anything in here. And since we're going to be making changes to the quilt, we want to make sure that this project stays intact. So I have already created my new project by taking the master and doing a file save as. So I'm going to just open this project. So I'll select this project and click OK. Now this is the sketchbook for this project. You can see the classic Dear Jane quilt. This is the classic Dear Jane with just the layer 1 elements and the blank layout. Now those were included with the master. Any additional quilts I have in here are just different quilts that I've been playing with, different ideas for my own Dear Jane. So I am going to go back to the very first one, the classic Dear Jane quilt, and click Edit. Now that I have this one on my screen, let's take a look at the Layout tab. Now, as we know, there are 13 rows horizontally and vertically, and the blocks are 4.5 inches. So 4.5 inches is kind of small. If you wanted to change that to increase the size to maybe 6 inches, you can do that. But let's watch what happens when you do that. So right now the center of our quilt is 64.5 by 64.5. So I'm going to click the Keep Width and Height Equal, and then I'm going to change this to 6 inches. So now that that is 6 inches, you can see that the center has changed to 84 by 84. And since we increased the center of the layout, this border has changed. You can see the proportions are not the same as they were before. Let's go over to the Borders tab and we'll take a look at what has happened there. So this border is still 8 inches wide. So from this dimension to this dimension, 8 inches. And there are 13 blocks, just like there were in the original. But because this center has changed, EQ had to factor in a different width dimension here or height dimension here to maintain the 8 inches and the 13. So now this dimension is no longer 5. Originally, these blocks in the classic Dear Jane were 8 by 5, but now they are not. We can go over to the Print and Export tab and see what they are now. So if I click on Print and Export and select one of these, you can see that the width is still 8 inches like we had selected, but the height is now 6.5 instead of 5. So that makes them a little bit squattier than they were originally. You can also see that the layer 2 elements aren't fitting the quilt nicely anymore either because the proportions of this border are no longer correct. So we need to make adjustments to make sure everything fits properly. So what we need to do is we need to change the size of this border by the same percentage that we changed the center blocks. So let's go back to the Layout tab. The blocks were originally 4.5 by 4.5, and we changed them to 6. So we need to do a little bit of math to figure out what that percentage is. What we need to do is we need to take the new size, which is 6 inches, minus the old size, which is 4.5 inches, and we get 1.5. So the new size minus the old size equals 1.5. And then we take 1.5 divided by the old size. So 1.5 divided by 4.5 equals 0.33, which as we know is 33%. So we increased the center block size by 33%. So we need to do the same thing with the borders. So over on the Borders tab, for this border, with this border selected, we need to increase 8 inches by 33%. So to do that, we multiply 8 times 33%. So 8 times 0.33 is 2.64. So we need to add 2.64 to 8, which is 10.64. So 10.64 is our new dimension for this border. So let's go ahead and change this border to 10.64. So when I type in the numbers, it changes it to 10.625. It doesn't allow me to do 10.64. That's because of some settings we have set up. Yours might actually only take it to 10.5 or maybe 10.75. So we need to make some changes to make sure we can get as close as possible to the number we need. So go over to the left on the left toolbar and choose Work Table Options. There's a little gear button. So click on the gear, and under Snap Settings, change your palette sliders will jump by option. So right now mine's set to 1/16 of an inch, which I'm fine with. Yours is probably set to 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch. You can go with 1/16. You can even try 1/32 of an inch. I'll go ahead and do that to see what I get. So change it to either 1/16 or 1/32 and click OK. So now if you weren't able to get close to 10.64 before, go ahead and try typing 10.64 in again. 10.64. Mine stayed at 10.625. That's the closest I'm going to be able to get for that. So 10.625 is the width here and the height here, 10.625. We still have 13 blocks. We don't want to change that, but now the new dimensions in respect to this new size of the center is 10.625. So let's go over to the Design tab and check out to see what this looks like. It looks like our layer 1 border fits our layer 2 elements a lot nicer now. And let's go ahead and see what the sizes are of that border. So if I click on one of the triangles, I can see the 10.625, which it did round it to 10.63, but that's the dimension that I added on the Borders tab. And then EQ calculated the height to be 6.5. So instead of 8 by 5, which is our original classic Dear Jane quilt, it's now 10.63 or 10.625 by 6.5. So those are your new dimensions. So when you're ready to print your blocks, you would click on a block, and let's look at the foundation. It picks up the new size, 6 inches for the center, and there's your pattern for your 6-inch block. And then we can do the same . There are some calculations that you will need to do in order to adjust these sizes and keep that border in proportion with the original. So if you do have problems with this, please feel free to contact our office. We are happy to help you with this to get your new size of your quilt as close as possible.